Paul McCartney has spent much of his career proving that the bass guitar can be far more than a background instrument. With the Beatles, he transformed the role of the bassist, often treating the four-string instrument as another melodic voice, rather than simply something that followed the chords. That evolution was becoming particularly noticeable by 1965, as the Beatles moved beyond the straightforward pop of their early years. McCartney began finding new ways to make his bass lines more expressive, adventurous, and musical. Ironically, becoming the Beatles' bassist had never really been his original ambition. When Stu Sutcliffe left the group, McCartney found himself taking over the bass almost by necessity, but what initially seemed like an inconvenience ultimately became one of the defining advantages of his musicianship. From the bass chair, McCartney could influence the harmonic direction of a song, while locking in with Ringo's Starr to create its rhythmic foundation. By the time the Beatles were recording Rubber Soul, he had begun exploring just how much freedom the bass could give him. One important influence was Motown bassist James Jamerson, whose fluid and melodic playing showed McCartney that a bass part did not have to remain locked to the root notes. On You Won't See Me, for example, McCartney moves around the chord changes with a freedom that gives the song an almost independent musical dimension. But not every Beatles song required that kind of approach. On Michelle, McCartney found another opportunity to rethink what the bass could do. The song itself was unlike the more conventional pop material the Beatles had recorded only a few years earlier. Its sophisticated chords, French-inflected atmosphere, and jazz-inflected character demanded something more than a bass line simply following the harmony. McCartney responded by treating the bass almost like another instrument in the arrangement. Rather than merely reinforcing the chords, he created a line that interacted with the melody and helped give the song its distinctive movement. The bass became part of the composition itself. Years later, McCartney remembered the experience clearly. "I'll never forget putting the bass line in Michelle, because it was a kind of Bizet thing. It really turned the song around. You could do that with bass. It was very exciting." That final phrase, "it was very exciting," says a great deal about the way McCartney viewed the instrument. For him, the bass wasn't simply something he had been forced to play after Sutcliffe's departure. It had become a creative tool. He could use it to change the character of a song, add movement beneath a melody, and sometimes even create a second melody of its own. That philosophy would become one of the defining characteristics of his Beatles playing. There are obvious examples. On Taxman, his bass is aggressive and prominent, helping give the track much of its driving energy. On Hey Bulldog, it becomes an essential part of the song's swagger. And perhaps even more impressive is what McCartney does on George Harrison's song, Something. The song is already one of the Beatles' most beautiful compositions, but McCartney's bass does not simply stay out of the way. It moves melodically around Harrison's vocal and guitar, responding to the arrangement almost like a conversation between instruments. That was McCartney's great strength as a bassist. He knew when to step forward and when to disappear into the arrangement. He could provide a simple foundation when a song needed one, then suddenly introduce a melodic idea that changed the entire feel of the track. By 1965, he was beginning to understand just how much could be accomplished from the bass guitar. Michelle was one of those moments when that realization became particularly clear. What might have started as another bass part became something McCartney remembered decades later because of how dramatically it transformed the song. And that may be the real reason his Beatles bass lines remain so admired. McCartney never seemed satisfied with simply playing the notes that were expected of him. Whether he was supporting Lennon, Harrison, or one of his own compositions, he was always listening for another possibility. Sometimes that possibility was a bass line. And in the case of Michelle, McCartney discovered that a few carefully chosen notes could turn an already beautiful song into something far more musically exciting.